We're so glad you're here at the Hybrid Schools Conference, that you chose to come to this session today. Hope everybody's had their morning coffee. We got a great day ahead of us. And we've got a really great conversation in store this morning. So we're going to jump right in. We've got a lot to cover. So before we dive into research about learner outcomes, I want to start with an introduction about VELA, about this research, and then with all of our panelists here today. My name is Serena Deutsch. I'm here today representing VELA. If we haven't met yet, if you haven't interacted with VELA yet, VELA is the nation's leading community of entrepreneurs who are providing alternatives to conventional schooling. We accelerate the exploration of new frontiers in education by providing early capital, access to a thriving community of entrepreneurs, and connections to resources and support. The VELA Founder Network, which currently has almost 2,500 members, founders have access to exclusive funding opportunities, resources, events, and the collective knowledge of thousands of entrepreneurs that are working in this alternative education space. Through all of this, there's a few different types of entrepreneurs. So about half of them are operating small learning environments, like many of the people in this room and at this conference. And the other half are what we call ecosystem builders, who are offering direct services and support for the alternative education ecosystem. And the work of the VELA Founder Network spans all 50 states and 3 US territories. So we're super excited today to be joined by 3 visionary founders, some from Georgia and some who've traveled further afield. So we'll jump into introductions in just a moment. But first, we're here to preview insights from a forthcoming research report about learner outcomes. So we passed out our sort of preview sheet to some of you, and we're hoping to release that soon. This is based on a survey we did in the VELA community. We did it with 223 VELA founders who responded about how they define success in their learning environment. We asked what academic knowledge and skills are seen as most important, what tools founders are using to track academic progress, and then how people are using this data in a range of different ways. And this data really brings greater visibility to how learners, families, and entrepreneurs define and measure success in the out-of-system space. So we're really excited to share these findings. One of the things that makes VELA unique is our trust-based approach to philanthropy and our belief that founders know best how to serve the learners and families in their community. And that comes through with this research too. We really want to empower founders to define success in terms that meet their community's needs. And we want to know how they're achieving impact against those metrics. So we're going to dig in today, learn more about that, learn from these 3 founders and how they approach learner outcomes. So we'll kick it off from here, and we'd love if everyone could introduce yourself and share a little bit about your program or organization.
Greetings all, greetings all. My name is Asha Kazi Golden. I am the co-founder with Shelby Stone Still of Gabbard Forest School. We're right here local in Decatur, Georgia. So we work with children all the way from 4 to 12 years old, and we are completely outside, rain, sunshine, cold, we do it all. And is there anything else I need to share? Oh, last, but we do really focus on Black children in nature. So our focus really grounds the Black child and Black families. Thank you.
All right, before I introduce myself, how many of you here started a program for your own family, for your own kids, out of a need that you had? All right, several of you. I can relate to that. 30 years ago, I joined the homeschool movement, and I started many co-ops, activities, different things for my own kids. Well, fast forward, I had 2 left. I have 5 kids total. I had 2 left, and I wanted them to do high school and early college dual enrollment with a cohort. So I started another, essentially, co-op that became the Tandem EDU program. And so today I'm representing Tandem EDU. We launched in 2016 with 20 students. We now have 5 locations here in Georgia with 165 students. And our goal is to graduate students with a high school diploma and up to 60 college credits.
Hi, my name is Mercedes Grant, and I am the founder of Path of Life Learning. I first want to say thank you, Serena, because you said there are 2,500 recipients, and you chose us to be here with you, so thank you so much for that. I just launched my micro school this fall in Yorktown, Virginia. And we serve students in kindergarten through 5th grade this upcoming fall, and then moving forward we are going to grow with our students. So I'm hoping to learn a lot from others that serve students in the middle school and high school, micro schools, and hybrid schools. We are a faith-based organization, and we focus really on a mixture of academics and enrichment. And it's just been incredible to watch the vision even kind of transform as, you go from theory to reality. So right now I'm living in the reality, and it's actually so much more beautiful than I could envision beforehand. So thank you all for being here and for listening.
Thank you so much. And I think especially, you all have a range of ages you serve, communities you serve, purposes you're serving, and I think that just lends so much great insight into this conversation we're about to have. So one of the biggest findings from this survey that we did is founders of non-traditional learning environments have a really expansive and often a holistic view of what learner success looks like, and that's in terms of what is success and how is that measured, sort of outside of traditional metrics sometimes. And so we've seen learning environments often prioritize academic as well as human development measurements. So to kind of help frame this conversation, can you share what sort of outcomes you're prioritizing when defining learner success?
Yeah. For us, our outcome is really getting children to know and learn how they learn. So we are an outdoor environment. We do a lot of observation. So my background is in Montessori education. So we do a lot of observation, taking notes, and we partner with families. So we are always having discussions about what their children are learning. And since we do work with a lot of families who are going to be long-term homeschoolers, these conversations are really enriched because they share with us what they're working on at home and struggles they have. And so we're able to compare notes. So for us, it's a lot more pinpoint than doing more of a quantitative measure, like doing standardized testing, because we're able to bring in a lot of observation notes and data.
So unlike Ashley, we are more of a quantitative type program. Most of our students are high school level students with the goal of some sort of college, whether that's a 4-year university and a bachelor's degree or a technical college. So in order to get into college, you have to have some sort of assessment grades, something that you can present to the admissions folks to say, hey, I'm qualified for college level work. So we do have traditional assessments, but also non-traditional as well. In terms of traditional assessments, we are looking and watching each student as they progress through the program. We have certain benchmarks that they have to meet along the way. They have to pass math and English classes with an 85% or higher. They have to qualify for their first college class based on the Iowa assessment. Y'all are probably familiar with that. However, we don't do the full battery of Iowa. We're only looking at English and math scores, primarily English. So we just administer English and math. We don't worry about the other sections of that assessment because they're not relevant to us. So in addition to the benchmarks, traditional grades are a part of what we do. But then also we focus on mastery learning. And our students, it's not, most high schools are you take a test and that's your final grade, right? Well, with us, if you're not happy with your grade on a test, quiz, or paper, you can redo that and earn back 1/2 of the missed points. That's what we call a mastery approach. And that's so students learn the foundational concepts before they move on to the next concept. We're very intentional in what we teach. We're very college prep, and so there's no busy work. We don't want to move on until the student has mastered that particular skill. So we use a combination of assessments that ultimately serve our students' ultimate goal, which is going to college or starting in a career field.
So, I am very similar to your model where we do lots and lots of observation. And it's very, very holistic. I love that you use that term because as humans, we're always observing everyone around us. We're like, is this conversation going well? Am I cleaning these dishes appropriately? Like, if there's still food left, then I need to change it up, right? So that's kind of how we are operating. We are constantly looking at our students and we're seeing, are you joyful? And the definition of success is, for me, is joyful learning. And then are you able to meet the outcomes that we have set forth? A lot of what we do is project-based learning. We do have some assessments that we use for students, especially in those kindergarten and first grade grade levels. And that's because they come in with such like different foundational skills at that point, and we want to see and measure that growth. But otherwise, we're really looking to see if students are able to work together, if they're able to accomplish the goals that they have set forth. But it's really student-led, and we are facilitators of this. And the beauty of this is that as we grow, our measurement of success can also change. And that's what I love about permissionless education, is that we don't have to follow a standard. And as a former special education teacher, we had all of those very rigid outcomes and those measures that you had to constantly collect data, and it was all about paperwork and pleasing someone else, when really now we get to look at the whole child, and it's so much more authentic.
So I really appreciate what the strategies that Mercedes and Ashley are using, because when those students come to a program like ours, they're self-motivated.
Yes.
They know their learning style, they know what works best for them, and they can take their education and run with it. And that is the goal in our program. After a student joins our program, we expect them to be totally independent and self-motivated after the first 8 weeks. And when they've grown up in a program like those that are presented today, they're very successful with us.
Yeah, and I want to also piggyback off of that, because one of the goals for my students is for them to be prepared for a program like yours. I would love for my students to know exactly where they're going, but then to also be ready for, all right, I have these skills that I've learned at this age, and I know what mastery looks like, and now I can chase not only academics, but also the things that they are very, very passionate about too. Good point.
Yeah, this is so interesting. And I think, thinking how these programs all serve learners in different ways, how you can kind of mix and match them together, I think is great. So we're going to dive a little deeper into measurement tools, and we hit on Iowa assessments a little, some more mastery approaches, portfolios. What we found, we asked about this, we were kind of curious what tools people are using in our community. We found that 85% of founders, so the overwhelming majority, are using program-led or created tools such as observations, portfolios, presentations, or assessments that are created by the staff. 36% were using standardized assessments, and 59% chose to use adaptive technology platforms such as Khan Academy. Some obviously mix and match some of these as well. So to kind of follow up on that last question, are there other tools you've considered? How did you sort of choose the ones that you ended up using? And, as Mercedes mentioned, this might evolve too. So how do you think about evolving the tools you're using as your program evolves?
Yeah, that's a good question. I'll go first with this one, just because I'm excited about watching the students grow and then finding out that what I thought was going to be my assessment data or tools or whatever totally shifted once we got into the actual learning. So I went and I'm leaving public education. I was not a homeschool parent prior to this. And so I left public education and I was like, all right, I'm going to take all of the best pieces and I'm going to give it to the students. And I had this idea in my mind, and I'm part of the Chi Pod Catalyst program, and their mentorship kind of led me to different curricula and assessment tools, and I was like, no way, I don't want to do any of that. And then I realized that I needed all of that. So I do use a program called Zern for math. I really thought that I was going to be able to use paper-based all of the levels for the children and they could work independently, and it was a whole nightmare. So I scratched that idea and I started using Zern, and the kids are obsessed with it. And I would have never thought, because I was like, there's no way, I don't really like, Common Core and all that. But it's Eureka math based, and the kids are obsessed with it. I can place the students at their level on lessons that I know they need work on. So it is online based. It has videos. It's like so cool, and the kids beg for more, which is really, really awesome. Another thing that I want to use in the future is Lexia, which I've heard that children love that one too. I don't, though. I try to steer away from anything that's standardized feeling, because it just takes out some of that authentic learning. And I'm like you, where I want the children to succeed academically, but I also want them to get their hands dirty, and I want them to learn about things that they're super interested in.
So our assessments have kind of been dictated by the college scene. And in Georgia, we have the University System of Georgia, the USG, that dictates college admission for all of our state schools. So we have to tailor our curriculum and our assessments to meet their requirements, particularly if our students want to transition into a state school, which in Georgia, it's very affordable because the Hope Scholarship is going to pay 100% of the tuition at a public college, and between $5,000 and $7,000 at a private college in Georgia. So that's a significant annual scholarship that we don't want to jeopardize. And so our students can qualify for the Hope Scholarship if they graduate from us with a 3.0 GPA. So we've got to be able to document that they have a 3-point GPA, so we've got to do traditional grading. We also have got to do some standardized testing. We do standardized testing once a year, just 1 year, once in our program, but then we expect them to take the SAT and the ACT because the colleges want to see those scores for admission, and a lot of scholarship boards want to see those scores. So while we are very traditional, I guess you'd say, in our assessments, we do have a lot of wiggle room in that we're not testing our students every single year with a standardized test. We don't do that. We test them in 9th grade and that's it. That's one. And Georgia law requires homeschool families to test every 3 years, so we do that for our 9th graders, and we've met the requirement for our state law. So definitely a combination of traditional assessments. However, we do use some non-traditional assessments that you might not consider assessments. So our students have the ability to take their first college class when they're 14. We do some benchmark testing. We give them some training, English classes to make sure they're ready. When you see a 14-year-old student get their first college t-shirt, the confidence in that student is amazing. That student believes they can conquer anything academically. That's one measure that we use. Another measure we use is how much are these kids involved outside of academics? Is their nose constantly in the books? We're looking at, are they involved in extracurricular activities, sports, working, community service? What are they doing outside of our program is another measure of success for us. They need to be involved in the community. In fact, we place high value on those sorts of activities and even include those activities as electives on their high school transcript. Those are the things that define them as an individual, who they are, their gifts, talents, and ultimately what they may be able to do later on in life.
So just a quick question. How many educators are in the room? Okay, cool. So for us, when we do assessments, since there's a lot of educators in the room, I mix it up. I tell our families I'm not against standardized testing, especially if you've taught in traditional spaces. You're used to Common Core, you're used to state standards. So for at Gather, I always use those as guardrails. Guardrails are important because you want to see, like, if your student leaves you, can they succeed in the next learning environment? Because let's be real, some families need to switch and change, so you want to make sure your children are always ready for success. So I use the state standards, I use Common Core to build our assessments, because just like the lady shared, mastery is super important. And what our environment allows for is to be repetitive on the lessons. Like you shared, You take a test in traditional school, you get it. Whatever grade you get, and you move on to the next thing. When you are creating a learning environment, you have time to, like, if you notice, like, we're missing the mark here, how can I restructure it? How can I say it a different way? Do I need to bring another tool in so the child can really get to learn? How does the child learn? And at the same time, you're learning, how many different ways can I teach something? So that's why this environment is beautiful, because both parties are learning at the same time. So that's where the standardized approach comes from. Also, time for learning is a great tool to use. It's free. I know there's a paid portion too, but that's another way if you just need guardrails of, like, what are students learning in other places, and you don't have a lot of funds to try out different programs. These are so, like, low cost, and you will still be able to feel confident in your teaching. One-on-one assessments is more of the qualitative work that we do at Gather, and I love it, actually. It comes from a Montessori background, but it allows me to see, has the child reached mastery? And Maria Meinzer talks about a skip stitch. And when we talk about that is when you'll notice a child is working and they're missing something. And it could be something super small. But in Montessori, the small stitch matters, because as the child gets older, you'll see that now we're missing, like, foundational things, because the child skips some stitches along the way. So if you're able in your program to have a one-on-one assessment or two-on-one where you're taking notes and you're really seeing where the child is super beneficial.
This is so interesting because I feel like, there's so many different tools at your disposal. And I think, thank you for sharing examples that hopefully people can take and learn from. Examples that are low cost or free is also great. But love sort of hearing how those are evolving and how you're using them. We're gonna talk a little bit about accountability, which I feel like some people, don't love that word, don't love what it means, especially if you're coming from a traditional school background. But at VELA, we believe that accountability really is just best serving learners and families in the way that meets their needs. But that being said, some programs, if you receive state funding or grants or things like that, you're going to have to report on certain metrics for many of these reasons. And so we asked, how are people using data? What sort of purposes are they using? Is it external? Is it for their families? How does that go? And so we found 71% of founders use data that's really focused on supporting learner progress, like we just discussed. 46% are using the data to help families support their learners, and 51% are using data to improve their programs more generally. And we found that only 10% are using data for accreditation or third-party accountability. So I'd love if you could talk a little bit about how are you using data insights, how is it helping your program, are you reporting out, and how are you kind of using this throughout the school year?
So we are using data. We're part of the 70%, but also part of the 10%. So we're in both categories. So our students have the chance to be a Hope Scholar, like I talked about. It's 100% tuition at a state college after they graduate high school. 97% of our graduates every year are Hope Scholars. That means they have a 3.0 GPA. They're going on to either a 4 or 2-year school and getting 100% of their tuition paid. 88% of our students actually go on to college, whether that's a 4-year school or a technical school, 88%. And 100% of our students graduate with some college credit, at least a semester under their belt. So those are kind of the statistics that we're tracking every year to see where they are. Now, in terms of using data for accreditation, I was a staunch opponent of accreditation in the early days of homeschooling. I started back in the 90s homeschooling, and I was very, very, very opposed to accreditation. Fast forward to 2016 when I started the Tandem program, which is a high school program. And when you look at the history of accreditation in Georgia, it's unusual compared to other states. In the early 90s, the Hope legislation went into effect. That's how the students get the Hope Scholarship, right? And in that legislation, it specifically spells out the difference between an accredited program or school and an unaccredited. Okay, so when I was homeschooling my own older children as an unaccredited homeschool, they could not get the Hope Scholarship right away. They had to wait, complete 30 credit hours post-dual enrollment, and then qualify for the Hope Scholarship retroactively. A lot of hoops that they had to jump through and I had to jump through. The benefit of the accreditation for my families is that their students immediately when they graduate and go into college get the Hope Scholarship. So we're talking anywhere from $5,000 to $7,000 a year. That's a huge financial benefit for our families simply because of accreditation. Now, along with that, we do some reporting. It's not a tremendous amount. I don't think it's overburdensome. And the cost has not been something that's been out of our range. So I encourage everybody to be open-minded when it comes to accreditation, definitely.
I struggle with this one because, you know, I feel like there are two sides, right? There is the side of me that really wants to make sure that all of the learning that happens is super authentic and student-led and has a lot of soft skills for the students. Like I love my micro school has a lot of presentations happening by 7 and 8 year olds. Like it's insane to me because I'm never before have I thought that students at that age were capable of doing something so incredible, doing research and learning how to use the internet to research and then presenting and creating models and talking in front of crowds like this and feeling okay. I mean, don't get me wrong, they're a little nervous, but we're practicing. And so there's part of me that's like, if someone came along and wanted that to stop, and so that my students could attend Path of Life Learning for free or so that we could, access, more students could access us, I don't know that I would want to take that away. So I do struggle with that piece of it. I do think that accreditation is something that's huge because I think that in a way it makes us feel like, am I legitimate now? Like, if I'm accredited, can I be legitimate? And as a parent, I'm getting ready to send my son to college. And he, unfortunately, in Florida, where we're residents, since we're military, they have both. You have to have the GPA and the SAT score. And my son has way beyond the GPA, but he can't pass the test, which is really sad because that's so much money. So, there are these things that kind of tug at our heartstrings and like, could we do both though? I think absolutely. There are micro schools, there are private schools, there are charter schools that serve both. And I think that's beautiful about this whole movement is that we don't necessarily have to have permission and we can do also what the parents want. And if you can offer maybe multiple pathways that allow the parents to choose, like, okay, if I can afford this end of the education for my child, or if I really value some of these standardized assessments or some of these standards that are created for accreditation, I think that's very, very valuable too. But I personally do struggle because I don't want to take away some of these beautiful things that I've offered these children through Path of Life Learning.
Oh, I think the question was answered beautifully.
Well, and I would just like to follow up on that. I struggle with the need for accreditation up to 8th grade.
Yeah.
Why do you need somebody
Yeah.
to approve and to rubber stamp what you're doing?
Yeah.
I don't think that that's necessary. But when you get into high school, it's more of a high stakes situation.
Yeah,
And
it
so
really
there
is.
definitely is a value there.
Yeah.
Totally. And again, I think these themes of age and who you're serving and what they're hoping
Yeah.
to get out of it at a certain age is so important to consider when making these decisions. So thanks for not only sharing what you do, but also the thought process around it a little bit, I think is really helpful. So we touched on this a little bit, but beyond just learner outcomes, Christine, you talked about your program outcomes. The students are, that because of this, they can go to college, they can have these successes. And so to measure these kinds of outcomes, we hear a lot about customer engagement, feedback, surveys, different ways, interviews with students, parents, to kind of hear beyond just the test scores, how are they doing, how are they liking it, are they coming back every year? And we found that VELA founders are growing at an impressive rate. It's over 20% a year, some higher for the smaller learning environments. Can you talk about sort of, has your program grown? Some like to stay intentionally small, and that's okay, but how are you sort of, from like the organization standpoint, looking to respond to feedback from families and make sure you're really doing what they're looking for?
So we've probably been around the longest, I think.
Yeah.
So, and we have grown at a rate of about 20 to 25% students per year. And while we do use a lot of the data, to measure success, we also use some non-traditional methods. For example, right now, this time of year, we are surveying every single student and parent to see how well the teachers are doing and how well the program is doing. And one of the last questions on there is we ask them to give a testimonial. And you can go on our website and see all of those testimonials. Year after year, we get just tremendous feedback about the success of the students and how much they appreciate what we do, pairing with the family so that they're not doing the high school thing alone. In addition to that, probably the biggest indicator for us for success is our referral program. We looked at the number of families, which is about 75% that are with us as a result of a referral. And we decided to invest in our families instead of, say, Facebook or Google marketing. So we will pay our families, give them a 10% discount off of their total family fees for the year for one referral. They can make as many referrals as they want that year, and that discount will accumulate. I have families that are earning 60 and 70% off of their fees annually simply because of our referral program. And then probably the last measure of success that we have are the testimonials from our college partner. Our students have held well over 2,500 seats in college classes, and we partner primarily with one Christian college here in Georgia. And the testimonials that we have from the college staff regarding our students, how well prepared they are, how mature they are, how well they do, speaks volumes about our program and the success of our learners.
Testimonials are super key. So Gather is ending our third year in operation. So our first year we had 9 families, and to get those 9 families, when I tell you, was such hard work. I was on the phone for hours, from early mornings to sometimes 7, 8 o'clock at night, just trying to prove this concept that your child can learn outdoors. And simply testimonials, we started an Instagram page, and by the following year, we had to turn some families away. We could only accommodate for 19 families. So now we have 21 kids, 19 families, and our waiting list has over 100 families on it. So that begs the question of, do we hire more teachers? So now we have to figure out that part. But testimonials is the key. If you are, I would say, even if you don't feel like, I can't do social media, I would urge you to do something where people can see the work in action. Because it is, if you're talking to families who are traditional school-minded, this is a huge leap. We all could connect on we want what's best for children, but it's still a huge leap to think about, is my child going to learn in this space? Are they going to be, do they have what they need to be successful? Like the last presentation, that opening panel, we talked about the understanding of success. We all say success, and we all have a feeling, what does success mean? So when you talk to these families, that's where we have to meet at. We have to meet on how I define success is the same way you define success, and if not, let me show you what it could be.
Oh, how many times did we just hear the word families? That's what I'm hearing the answer to this question. It's so deep because I think that's one of the things, one of the biggest differences. I was a middle school educator, and I didn't have a connection with my families, unless I had to call and say, hey, this is what happened today.
Yes.
But now I get to talk to my families every single day at pickup and drop off, and then more. And I think what you touched on was saying, they don't want to be alone. Mm-hmm. And to have the sense of community is huge. I also do surveys. I surveyed my students and my parents That gave me some really great feedback. I would highly suggest that because, you know, you can think like everything is so awesome, and it is, but then there are little things that you don't pick up on. Like, I wish I knew more of what my kid was doing every day. So when I send my weekly emails, I add it on. Like, hey, will you send a weekly email to your cohort, and I'm going to send a weekly email to my cohort, and we are going to go ahead and make sure that families know exactly what's happening at Path of Life. And I think it's also important so that they can feel connected and talk about it at home. Because when we get in the car with our children, we're like, hey, how was your day? And they're like, good. And that's like it. You know, they can't think of anything specific. But when I tell you that we're learning how to say, ¿Cómo te llama? Me llamo Mercedes in Espanol, and the parents can go ahead and have that conversation with their kids. And, like, you know, you get to bring home the learning a little bit. So I think family connections is really, really important. Surveys are really important. They just give us so much feedback. The testimonials, of course, is huge. We started off, in my mind, I had 12, okay? I was like, if I could get 12, like, that would be so cool. And I just had moved to Virginia, and I moved to Virginia 3 weeks before the school year started, and I was like, okay, I'm going to open this micro school in 3 weeks. That's all I need, because I'm, like, so good. And then they were like, who are you? And I'm like, oh, oops. So I actually spent a lot of time networking, but I still only had 12 on my radar. Like, I really want to serve 12 kids. And God blessed me with 33 children my first year, and having a wait list of over 50. And this coming year, we're looking at doubling the numbers. Like, how is this possible? So I think really, truly, success is looking at, are your students thriving? Are your families happy? Are they supportive of this learning environment? And then the referrals kind of tell it all. Like, if Melissa said that your program is so awesome, so I'm bringing my son Roger, real story, then you know that you're doing something right in these children's lives. And I think that speaks volumes for all of us.
Can I say a little?
Please, yeah.
I love what you said about the communication, the newsletters. That was critical for us. Year one, because I was in the classroom for 10 years, and I'm like, I'm going to open up a school. And then I didn't realize when you open up a school, you're wearing literally all of the hats and not just the teacher hat. And so communicating with families strengthened year two, and now it's phenomenal year three. But that year one was really hard because it's like I was trying to figure out so much. Shelby was trying to figure out so much, and then parents were like, I don't know what's going on. In my head, I'm like, talk to your kid. I have so many things to do. But writing the newsletter, sending photos, having that lifeline got parents invested. Then they're like, well, how can I volunteer? Can I show up and teach a class? And it starts working for itself. So I say it's worth the time. Even if you're tired, it's worth the time.
So, you know, we have end of year one with a wait list. You've been serving 2,500 college seats, which is amazing. We've got a wait list of 100 over here. So, you know, again, I think success, as we've said, looks different for everyone, but would love to kind of hear what are the goals for your program? What do you imagine? It doesn't need to be in a year or 5 years, sort of however you define that. What are you looking to accomplish in the future? And as it relates to this conversation, are there any, you know, tools that might help get you there?
I want you to go first.
So our goal is not what you're expecting me to say. Our goal is to stay relevant. And that has come out of my experience in the last, since January, as both I'm a college English professor, and I'm also the director of the Tandem program. And as a college English professor, in 3 weeks, I had 20 students. 10 of them submitted AI-generated papers. Do you know what that is?
Oh, yeah.
They used artificial intelligence, ChatGPT, to write the papers. 10 out of 20 students, okay? And then it came back in my face in my program, okay? In 1 week, in 2 weeks, I had 6 students submit AI-generated papers, and 3 students submit AI-generated math tests, math answers, okay? So my challenge now my goal is to figure out how to stay relevant and teach these students how to use AI, artificial intelligence, for good. For good. Because right now they're using it for nefarious reasons. They're using it to cheat. They are submitting AI-generated work as their own. So that's a very lofty goal. I have learned way more about AI than I ever intended to in just a very short time. But I'm hoping maybe next year we can have a session about AI, because I have learned that I need to implement it in my classroom, because I need to teach these high schoolers how to use AI. They are the workforce, right? And if they don't have marketable skills, they're not going to get jobs when they leave my program or when they leave college. So at the college level, I have to teach them these skills, but then at the high school level, we have to prepare them for college, right? My husband worked for AT&T, and they were recently told that they have got to figure out how to use the company's AI platform to make themselves and their position more resourceful. And when they're onboarding people, they're going to be looking at those AI skills, and do they have the skills they need to compete in the job market and in the school setting. So AI has become a goal, not that I anticipated, but something that we've got to look at in order to stay relevant. But also we can use AI in our businesses. I don't know if anybody has explored that, but asking AI to write you a social media blurb, or to create a brochure, or, lots of opportunities there. So hopefully we'll see some of that next year here.
Yeah, I love that. Stay relevant. It just like shook me, because what we're doing is so relevant, and it's been relevant, but I think we needed the momentum. What they said in that keynote speaker session was like, we have momentum now. Our room is full. We have conferences happening all over the nation. We had an international microschooling conference last weekend. I think for me, I also want to stay relevant for sure. But I think for me, I'm kind of following the path that is kind of given. And I keep having to trust, because I've worked in several states across the nation just as a military spouse. And I just, every time I'm like, all right, why are you doing this? Why do we have to move again? All right, God, just reveal to me. And so I just keep following, and I'm like, all right, you got me. And now I'm realizing like this massive need in my area, Yorktown, Virginia, if anybody is familiar. But there's no school choice anything. Like within 20 miles, there's me, there's one like kind of bring your own device kind of micro school, computer based, and I just am sad about that. I feel like for me, I want growth. I want more students to be able to access an incredible education. And until there are more micro schools or even any other innovative ed models, like we're not going to be able to reach the students, as many students as we can, and as I guess that need something like this. So I personally, I love the VELA grant. I think it was incredible. I mean, we've done so many cool things with it this year. We're building a STEAM lab. We're extending our classrooms. We took over the whole wing, but we're packed. So I just want to continue to grow, but stay in a micro setting, like still feel micro. And because I believe like that's part of our vision, is that is why this is going so well. I want to continue to stay small, but also to serve as many students as we can in this really joyful and authentic way.
For me and for Gather, it's truly in the time, because early childhood, elementary, it goes by so fast. But if children could truly learn their gifting in our space, is a goal that I hope that I feel like we're on the pathway now, but that's where we really want to sink in, because once you understand your gifting, you have options. If I think about my own project, like going to elementary, middle, high school, college, graduate, a lot of that journey was figuring out what was I good at. And a lot of it actually relied on other people telling me what I was good at, and then me pursuing that thing. So if children understand how they learn and what they're good at, they have so many opportunities. They have so much leverage. They can say like, no, that doesn't really fit me, and go another path rather than just trying to figure it out.
Wow.
And what Ashley said is so important because when students get to our level, we have 3 different degree paths we can put them on. The distinguished competitive kid who wants to go to a really competitive university, just the college prep who wants to go to college, not sure what they want to major in, but then the student that wants to start a career right away. And if you have flushed out those gifts and talents during those early years, it makes my job as a high school educator so much easier.
Yeah, wow.
Okay, so this is my favorite question. We talked about numbers and how we're going to use all these tools and talk about growth, but at the end of the day, we're all here to serve learners. I think that love of learning and education is core to so many people who are here. We have a lot of educators in the room. And so I'd love if everyone can just take a moment to share a story from a student, a learner in your program, and maybe they weren't succeeding before and they're able to succeed now, but just something to sort of bring this closer to home, make this feel a little real. How is this helping somebody in one of your communities?
Well, this one, you were talking and I just tears fill my eyes because I was a special educator. I'm still a special educator. And I was in the middle school setting, like I said, and I taught math, and my students were able to be successful in math while they're with me. But then when they walk out of my classroom, they couldn't find success in the same way. And it really hurt me because I knew what the children, what each child is capable of, and it doesn't matter what an adult says. And then tell me what I'm good at. That stinks, especially if you have academic barriers. So that really stinks to hear. But then when I have had some really great success stories, especially from students that have struggled academically, social, emotionally, but to know some kids crying every day to just with the thought of coming to school and crying about it and not wanting to get out of bed. And we're talking about second graders. And then to come to Path of Life where they're accepted and they have their best friends and they're able to be in a community of learners where they finally belong and no one is giving them an F every day. That's huge. So I have all of my students on my mind, but I really have those students that will not succeed academically otherwise, especially at the forefront, because success, what is success? Doesn't have to be a grade. So I think that's beautiful.
Well, and what Mercedes said about a student struggling and then coming to her just really resonated with me. Several years ago, I was hosting an information meeting. It's basically an open house. Parents and students' perspectives can come and check us out, right? And I remember in the back row, there was a mom and her son. And his background was a combination of public and private, like you were saying, not successful in those settings. And so mom sat there and after the meeting said, "We're here because of your technical track. He has dyslexia and I know that that's all he'll be able to do." I said, "Okay, we have a technical track, sure." So he started with us and did well because of our mastery approach. And guidance counseling, the first year, we do guidance counseling once a year with all of our students. I said, "Okay, what are you looking at?" "Well, I want to be a mechanic." I said, "That's great, that's great." Next year did guidance counseling. I said, "Okay, you're still looking at aviation." Well, yeah, but I want to be a pilot." So senior year, guidance counseling. "Well, what do you want to do?" "Oh, I'm going to go to Liberty University, and I'm going to pursue a bachelor's degree in aviation." That's success. Wow. The student who mom told me he has dyslexia and he's going to be limited. No, he's not. He had a few college classes with us. We just demystified the college experience, gave him the confidence to know that he could be successful.
Wow.
For us, our success on a family level is that community piece. So for many of our families, they come to us because they want something different. They feel very isolated in parenthood. They feel very isolated, especially within homeschooling, because they're either a first-generation homeschooler And they have a lot of outside families saying, what are you doing with your child? Because we all know about the importance of early childhood. So they feel very isolated. So when they come to us and when we talk, and this is coming from parent testimonies, that idea of having that community, like, yes, my child goes to school. I drop my child off there. But we're also very intentional about having community events where families are able to come in, eat with their children. We play music, we have food, we play games. Like, it becomes a family style event. And many of our families bring relatives. And they're like, oh, wow, it really is a school. So we give that response, too. That's always the best response. And Shelby and I just smile and like, yes, we are. We're certified teachers, too. But build that community piece is so important because the journey is isolating. I don't know if you felt like that when you were teaching, where it's like, it's me and the kids, and we're going to conquer the world. But it becomes very siloed. So just tearing down those walls means something.
That's great. And I think, everybody has a story like this, but to just hear it and, hear that journey, I think is important. And the hard days when we're wearing all the hats, is what keeps us in the work. So we're close to the end of our time. If we don't have time for questions, maybe people can come up at the end and say hello. But we have a lot of micro, hybrid, homeschool leaders here, some who've been doing this for decades, some who are in their first year, some who are curious and are thinking, is this a thing that I can do one day? And so I'd love to just sort of take a moment and share advice. Is there something you wish you knew when you first started? We're always learning along the way, but some tip you'd give to somebody who's a little bit earlier on in this hybrid school journey.
So there's lots of things I could tell you. But probably the most important is that you will, hear me now, you will make people mad.
Yes.
Not everyone is going to agree with every decision you make, okay? But remember, keep this in mind, you are investing in the next generation of leaders, of entrepreneurs, of inventors, okay? These students, these people, these kids are one day they are going to be your doctor, your congressman, your lawyer, your judge, okay? They're going to be making decisions over us, over all of us, okay? So don't give up. It's worth it.
Woo. Follow up. Goodness. You know what? Change. Pivot. All the time. It's okay. Like, nobody's gonna, I guess people will get upset with you. People got upset with me this year. It hurt my feelings so bad. Because we're wearing so many hats and we're working so hard and we're doing good work. And then not everybody's gonna be happy. And that's okay too. But also listen to the children, listen to your families, and do not give up. You're absolutely right in that. Change what you're doing. If something's not working, change it up. Ask questions. I think one of the most beautiful things about this is now we have a community. Like, I came here last year and I met some people for the first time, and it was really cool because I knew people on the internet, and then you get to meet face to face and it's like, oh my gosh. But now I'm seeing people again, and now there's more people. And what I will say is that there are people out there that can answer almost every single question you have. Before there were no answers about regulations, and somebody's been talking about sprinklers. That's been a hot topic this conference. It's oh, do you have the sprinklers? Oh, this space doesn't have the sprinklers. So somebody has gone before you now. So definitely reach out, be part of a community, and build a community. There are people out there that you don't even realize, because like you said, there are people that have been doing this for decades. They don't even realize they're a hybrid school or micro school or whatever. They're just doing it. But find people and really believe in yourself, because what we're doing is really important work for this future generation.
My piece of advice is to have a partner, have somebody to help you do the work, because you do wear a lot of hats. Literally, I found my co-founder on Instagram. Our relationship started over a DM. So I had my son in March. I reached out to her in beginning of April, like, hey, because she reached out liking my work. So I have a company called Afrocentric Montessori, and she constantly liked my work. And I'm like, hey, I know you're a fan of my work. Have you ever thought about doing a pod? In my head, it was a school, but I just used the word pod because I didn't want to scare her. I didn't know her. And she said, oh, I'm interested. So we just started talking and talking. And from April all the way to July, we're like, all right, we're going to open up a school. In August, we had 9 families. And so I would encourage you to like shoot your shot. If there's someone you're curious about, or someone like, I think we might mesh, I would say take that leap, because it is harder when you do have a partner, right? Because now you have to like run ideas by, you can't move as fast, but you are wearing so many hats. And if you believe in the dream that we're teaching the future, that is a lofty and big reality, and you need support. And so my advice is like find somebody and stick through the arguments. When I said Shelby and I have had arguments where we left mad, but what keeps us together is the dream, the overall goal. So we're able to compromise. And sometimes I compromise, sometimes she compromised. And having people being mad at you, yes, sometimes she's mad at me, I'm mad at her. But what keeps us together is like we are creating something beautiful. And there is truly no argument that is that big that will make us destroy what we're creating.
Thank you all so much.
Thank you.
This was such a great conversation. Like we mentioned, this research report's about to come out, so this is the first time we've had a public conversation about it, and hopefully you all learned something. I definitely did. And just to sort of close, in the same way that I think many of us feel there's not one-size-fits-all approach to learning, there's not also a sort of one-size-fits-all approach to measuring learner outcomes or program success. And we heard a lot of those different ways today. So we're seeing people and programs thriving because they're really focused on serving the needs of their community, their customers, their learners. They're getting feedback, and they're just growing along the way. That's so important. And so we just really think this approach, the learning, the growing, the always kind of asking questions and being curious about the answers is going to help build these organizations that are transforming education and building our future leaders. So thanks everybody for sharing your insights. Thanks everybody for being here today. And we're excited to continue to get to know each other throughout this conference.
Yes, thank you.